Today, we're honored to welcome someone who literally left everything here at home to go support Ukraine in their battle against Putin and Russia. Join us today as we dive into the insightful realm of public relations with our distinguished guest, Mike Cronin. With a passion for leveraging communication strategies to making a positive impact, Mike is at the forefront of shaping narratives and fostering understanding. From the boardroom to the front lines of digital diplomacy, get ready today for an engaging conversation that goes beyond borders and explores the power of PR in a global context. Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast. So, Mike, thanks for joining us today. When I met you and Julia, who you work for, the name Ukraine PR Army. One of the first questions I had, and I think people want to know, is what does Ukraine PR Army, I know PR stands for public relations, but if you could just share with us, who's it made up of, who's in it, and what was the reason for it to even get started in the first place?
Yeah, why does it exist?
It started hours after the Russians invaded in February, on February 24th, 2022. A bunch of communications specialists and others who are connected to the communication community in Ukraine realized that it would be critical for Ukraine's victory and defense to let the world know the truth about what was going on with the war. And they were correct in assessing the importance of organizing a response and a voice that could collectively speak to what was happening, because many, even now, countries and populations in different countries still believe that Ukraine started the war, or the Russians are the good guys. The Russians are not kidnapping children or slaughtering and murdering and torturing and raping civilians for no reason.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you just real quick? It's amazing. Was it obvious right from I mean, you said this was created sort of the day that this happened in real time. Was it obvious right away the amount of sort of misinformation and disinformation that was going to be spread?
Yes, and that's because Putin and his regime has been spreading disinformation about Ukraine and its existence and the reality of a Ukrainian culture and nationality and ethnicity for 2 decades. This is something that has been in the works in his own mind for a while. He claims that there is no such thing as Ukraine, and he says that it's always been a part of Russia and it's an artificial construct. And the pretext for the invasion included things that he said, such as Nazis are running Ukraine and fascists are running Ukraine, and they are committing genocide against ethnic Russians who currently live in Ukraine. And besides being absurd and completely false, the irony is that he was arguing that these ethnic Russians who are being mistreated are living in the areas that, under his leadership, Russia invaded and occupied regions in eastern Ukraine and annexed Crimea illegally. So this whole situation was unnecessary, illegal, and he created it.
So, Mike, go ahead, Amber.
No, I was just going to say, it sounds like it was sort of based on lies from the beginning.
Correct.
And your job,
And
Mike, in the group you're part of, the Public Relations Army, made up of public relations executives, experts, and communications folks, have volunteered to combat that propaganda, combat those lies.
yes, and the way we do that is multifold. We connect reporters from around the world with actual Ukrainians on the ground who are experiencing the war, also Ukrainian experts in whatever professional capacity that a journalist might be looking for. We also partner with organizations such as NATO, for example. We're working on grant. We won a grant that from NATO to create a strategy to identify Russian disinformation narratives and campaigns and develop ways to combat them. And the number of people who are now part of Ukrainian PR Army is in the hundreds, and they span many countries. And I became involved in April of last year, and I met Julia, as you mentioned earlier, at South by Southwest in Austin. We sat together in a panel on disinformation, and then and I'm Ukrainian on my mother's side, and I decided to do something after 24 years as a normal, quote unquote, journalist, an objective, neutral journalist. I said, this is the only time in my life, I'm 54, where I have an opportunity to fight evil. And I don't have any military training, so that was a non-starter, but I could help using my journalism skill set. So I'm 100% not an objective, unbiased person when it comes to this. What Russia is doing is evil, and I want to be on the side of the good guys. And Ukrainian PR Army is trying to make sure that the world knows that what's happening in Ukraine is evil and they must be stopped.
So, Mike, you see this, and I'm sure everybody in the Ukrainian PR Army, they see this as there are people fighting with bullets and guns and tanks and planes. You guys are fighting this on the digital front.
That's correct. We are trying to provide people with facts and stories that are true. And one thing about fighting disinformation that, Amber, you know as a journalist yourself, it's impossible to fight lies with facts, unfortunately. Winston Churchill has this quote where a lie travels the world twice over before the truth can make it a block, or something like that. And it's very frustrating because for a while, many of my American journalist counterparts thought the way to fight disinformation in our own country or anywhere is just to continue to do high quality journalism. But that has failed. So what I have found might work is creating compelling narrative, truthful, factual stories that people can latch on to, that then will combat the equally powerful or arguably more powerful lies that are narrative stories.
Gotcha.
I think that's a really interesting point, and it's something that comes up in a lot of the conversations that John's been having with people, which is, I think you were at high school, and one of the teachers asked why, given all of the pitfalls of AI and the advancements in technology, why should we even bother? And, so we were talking about it afterwards, and the answer is the bad guys are going to bother. Like, they're going to use every tool that they can to their advantage. So, to combat that, we have to do the same thing. Is that?
Yeah, Mike, and just to add on to that, I get asked this question Amber mentioned all the time. And even in the education space, people are wondering, should we use AI? Should we not use AI? It's what Amber just said. The bad guys are going to be experts at this. We know that. What you're sharing and learning about the Russian invasion of Ukraine is another example of it. We have to learn this technology, flex our muscle in this technology space, find out what it's good at, bad at, where it can be used ethically, unethically, but we have to jump in because we know the bad guys are going to be using it.
And it's a frightening prospect because it's already here in many ways. Today, the New York Times reported that an AI created these explicit images of Taylor Swift that
Right.
millions of people saw. And what's very frustrating for me as a journalist is that it's two-pronged. One is that people already don't know how to find what is true and not true, what is fact and not fact. People already have less trust in journalists than in my lifetime and arguably in the past century. And then number two, I'm a journalist. How am I going to figure out if an AI created image, video, audio is real or not? We might have to go back to analog and make sure that we're speaking to a real person, talking to a real person, looking at an actual website from a real organization, because we can be tricked too. And it's frightening. So journalists now really have to work harder to make sure that our sources are real and that they are providing truthful information.
Mike, switching gears a little bit, what's in Ukraine on the ground right now? I know you haven't been there, but you'll be heading back there soon. I know you work in Kyiv when you're over there. When you talk to your friends and peers, what's it like on the ground right now? What are they most concerned about? Because, and the reason I ask is I see it less on the news than I did 6 months ago. I'm hearing less about what's going on over there. So now that we have you on the show, if you just want to share with us, what do you hear and what are you heading back into shortly?
It's a mixture. Some of my friends are depressed and they won't answer emails for a couple weeks and then they'll apologize and say, I'm depressed. And I obviously say, don't worry. You're facing an existential threat in a literal way. And others are more optimistic. They believe that NATO and the United States will continue to support Ukraine and that they will prevail. And then others are uncertain because right now they're in a situation where they're conserving the anti-missile defense weapons because they don't have enough. And they're running out of soldiers compared to Russia's essentially limitless supply of soldiers. And they are running out of weapons in general. So it's frightening for them. And they're also very nervous about the US presidential election. If an isolationist candidate wins and fails to continue support for Ukraine, Russia will erase Ukraine from the map, and then they will continue to pursue Putin's strategy of erasing Ukraine from memory. And that's where people like me come in and many other organizations who are on the ground there and include historians and journalists to make sure that we document what happened and let people know this occurred. Ukraine is real. The Russians did come and start a war, and it's a genocidal war by the common definition, the vernacular definition, which means to erase a population, but it's also meets all five conditions of the UN definition of genocide, including the deportation of at least 3 million people and roughly 700,000 children. And they're being re-educated under a Russian program, so they forget. that they're Ukrainian.
Mike, are there? Go ahead, Amber.
I was just going to say because John's right. You don't hear as much about it in the States as we used to. We have a Ukrainian flag in front of our house, and you drive around and you see signs of support. But what else can people do? Can people who are not, obviously you're giving so much, but people, just regular people, is there anything that we can do other than, putting the Ukrainian flag on our
Yeah,
house?
100%. What's amazing about technology today, and Ukraine is more advanced than the United States in digital tech and other types of tech. In many ways, they have all their credentials, their passports, driver's license on their phones. And over here, we're still fighting about that because it invades our privacy and that kind of thing. So they've created a bunch of websites for people like us around the world who want to help. We can help by doing things like this. If you want to donate money directly to the Ukrainian military, which I did, you can. You can go to a website and you can donate dollars to the Ukrainian military. You can also support American veterans who are fighting side by side with the Ukrainians. I did this also. I put up a veteran for a month in a hotel in Warsaw as he coordinated more American veterans going over to Ukraine to fight for Ukraine. And then you can donate material goods as well as money to many, many, many different humanitarian aid organizations. Some people have ethical problems with donating to the military because they don't want to be responsible for killing civilians unintentionally. And you don't have to. You can go to like one of the organizations that I helped out with as their PR person is called Ukrainian Action. It's based in London, but it was founded by a former Peace Corps volunteer who was based in Ukraine, and he's an American. And every 2 weeks, a convoy of trucks leaves London and drives to Ukraine, and they give medical and other humanitarian goods that people need throughout the country. And he uses his 20-year-old network to make sure that people receive what they actually need.
That's great info, Mike. And when we do the summary of the show, we'll put the list of some of the websites and the social channels that you mentioned here, so our listeners can.
Yeah, we'll make sure to
support.
Put it in the show notes so that we can.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. I'll put together a list.
That'd be great, Mike. All right, switching gears here. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing that information. I hear through the grapevine you're a movie buff.
I am indeed. I love movies. I watch so many movies that my friends are annoyed because every time they pick one, I likely already saw it.
Oh, that's funny. What did you think of the Oscar nominations?
Let's see. Overall, I think that they did a good job this year. I think the fact that Greta Gerwig was not nominated for Best Director, despite Barbie winning so many nominations, as well as the play it got and the cultural impact it had, is a bizarre omission. Same thing with Margot Robbie, who was not nominated for Best Actress.
It's kind of meta. It's almost like the plot of Barbie acting itself out in real life.
I know it's the two women who are so influential making a movie about this are removed from contention. Yeah,
right.
It's ridiculous. But one thing that frustrates me about the Academy Awards, which it's everyone knows, but it's still Looney Tunes, is that they never give the awards to the actual best performance or the best film. they always say, man, we missed that 10 years ago, so we're going to make up for it. And then they give it to this person or the director or the film this year. And then sometimes they're a little bit too influenced by the cultural conversation that appears to be occurring in the present, whatever it is. And then you have people who or projects that win or are nominated while ignoring far superior pieces of work or performances. So that's just
It's
a
very
reality.
political. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike,
I
it's like
know.
I know you know sports, Mike, but it reminds me of in the sporting world, they always say you have to be an all-star. You have to play like an all-star for 3 or 4 years before you actually become an official all-star. It's like, but by the time you get to be an all-pro or all-star, you might not have had a good season, but they're rewarding you for what you did the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it becomes outrageous. Like Nikolai Djokovic didn't win the MVP this past year because he had won the 2 previous years, and the voters got tired of him, and they wanted a better story, so they gave it to someone else, even though he had his best year and his
Right.
team won the championship. So
Right. There you
it's
go.
somewhat ludicrous.
There you
You
go.
would be a great, if you're still in the States on Oscar night, you'd be a great, you were invited to our home because you would be an excellent guest to watch the Oscars with.
I would love it. I would love it. Thank you.
That would
Yeah,
be
that'd be great.
awesome.
So, Nick, who do you think? What movie is it's going to win the Oscar? What do you think? Who do you think should win the Oscar? Who do you think will win the Oscar?
For Best
For
Picture?
Best Picture?
Picture.
Let's see. I think Oppenheimer will win because I think, well, number one, it got 13 nominations. And I think that Christopher Nolan is so well respected. And he, I believe, is the way they think is it's his time.
Yeah, we
My
saw that.
my cousin worked on that movie. He
Oh,
worked with
really?
Christopher Nolan
Okay.
on that movie. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's amazing. That sounds like a good job. A funny story. So the first week I was in Ukraine, I went to see Oppenheimer, and I thought, oh well, it'll be in English with Ukrainian subtitles. Well, I was very wrong. The whole thing was in Ukrainian. So I
Really?
sat there. Yes, I sat there for 180 minutes and watched it in Ukrainian, and the only word I understood was tak, which means yes.
That's
So
great.
that's a really funny story.
Yeah, so then
That's
I
a
come
funny story.
home, and Christopher Nolan, most of his movies, at first I thought to myself, you got to get out of here. This is ridiculous. But then I said, well, Christopher Nolan does lots of things with his movies, with his rearrangement of time, and the way he edits and uses.
And the way things look. I feel like it's a
The light,
it's very
the light,
visual.
yeah, the
Yeah.
visual,
And
right?
yeah, the color and the darkness and everything. So I thought to myself, oh, it'll still be worth watching. But I then realized, oh my gosh, this movie is just 180 minutes of talking, unlike his other movies. You know what I mean? And then I came home and I watched it in the States, and I was not. It didn't have to be 3 hours. Let me put it that way.
Right. Right.
Gotcha. Well, that's great feedback,
That's a
Mike.
great story.
Good story, Michael. Mike, I know you prefer Mike.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've wrapped it up. You've been a great guest, Mike. I appreciate you joining the show so much.
Well, thanks so much. I had a blast. I look forward to talking to both of you again. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
This was great.
I know we will talk soon, and safe journeys, Mike. All right, Digital Dilemma fans, that wraps up another episode. Thanks for tuning in and navigating our tech world with us.
Please rate us and leave a review. And if you enjoyed it, tune in next time. We'd also love it if you would send us any questions or suggest guests via email. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast.